And we're here at the IONS conference in Newport Beach, and you're here because you've written a book. It's called Inner Guidance, and you yourself have had a near-death experience. Could you tell us something about it?
I had a near-death experience that was quite unique. It was, in fact, in the middle of the day, as I was preparing for a master's degree class, and I suddenly noticed in the middle of the room that there was a black dot right in front of the stereo, hanging in the middle of the living room. And I didn't have any background or knowledge of near-death experiences. I had begun to have a series of very interesting spiritual experiences, but I had no idea what was happening. Fortunately, a boyfriend was with me. We were just eating a sandwich and drinking iced tea, and I asked him, "Do you see the black dot? It's right there in front of us." And he said no, he didn't see it. But it also came with a sense that someone very near to me appeared to be dying. And I said, "Do you feel all right?" And he was disturbed by this. He didn't like the way I was acting. And suddenly it got much worse. I was pulled directly through the black hole into a dark tunnel. And I found myself rapidly moving toward a tiny, tiny little point of light. And the tunnel was freezing cold. I was frightened. The feeling of coming out of my body was like being sucked out almost violently, very hard, and I had no idea what was happening to me. The next thing I know, I'm standing in a beautiful light, and everything, absolutely everything has changed. I am happy, I feel free, I'm joyous that this has happened. I don't understand it, but I'm standing in an ocean of golden white waves, this light with crystalline drops everywhere like diamonds floating in the air. And far into the distance, I see this magnificent waterfall. And I want to move toward the waterfall, and I have my eyes open and I'm walking toward it, and I'm told to close my physical eyes because it was so blinding bright that I couldn't see well. And when I closed my physical eyes, oddly enough, it was like putting on a pair of sunglasses. Suddenly I can see everything, and I can see it all very clearly, and it's unbelievably beautiful. But far beyond that are the feelings that I have. As the waves came toward me, they didn't hit me, they went right through my body. And as they went through my body, they washed away any of the negative emotions that I might ever have felt. So it was as if nothing bad has ever happened. I am completely joyous. I know that I'm absolutely loved. Life is more beautiful than I ever imagined, and this is the life that I want forever. I know that I'm alive, and I don't want to go back to my body. I now know that I have an identity that is completely separate from the body, and that this is the real me, that I am soul, this beingness, and I am in absolute bliss. And then I hear a voice that says, clearly, there are 10 things that you must know. And when you learn these things, you must go at once and follow all directions as they're given. And I, like many people, argued. I didn't want to go. I know it was very selfish, but I didn't want to go back to my life. And it's not that I had a bad life or a difficult life. I had a beautiful life, and I loved my life. And I was passionate about my life and everything I did, but nothing could compare with this. Nothing could even remotely compare with this. There was no reason that I would ever want to return, and I said so. Sorry, don't want to go. Find somebody else, please. And the voice said, you must go. You will have to return. And I felt so desperate that if I had something to cling to, I would have fought back. How foolish and selfish is that? But even if someone near to me appeared to be dying, I was selfish enough to say, I don't want to go. Find someone else. Surely someone else can go. I know this now. This is the nirvana. This is heaven. This is what we all want. So I listened then to the 10 things because it wouldn't stop. I had to go, I was told. And the 10 things included clearly, as I describe in the book, Inner Guidance, Our Divine Birthright, it includes the fact that there is no death. and that someone appeared to be dying who was very close to me, and that I could intercede, and that I must return, and I would know what to do because I would listen. I would follow the inner guidance as it was given. And that's where the title of the book comes from. That's where I really learned this intense and very real guidance that we're given. And then after I received the 10 things, boom, I'm back in my body again, shivering cold, and my boyfriend is sitting with me, and he's not liking what he's been experiencing. My body's shivering from going through the cold black tunnel, and now he looks at me and he said, "Oh my God, your face." He said, "You must come to the mirror and look at this." And my face was sunburned. My eyes looked so blood red. It looked like I'd been out on the beach all day without sunglasses. And that was just, it was just crazy to him. And I said, "But I went into this light. I don't understand it, but I've got to write down these 10 things. And I left the 10 things on the table, and I went to my class. I had a master's degree class that I had been waiting to go to. And I decided I just need to do something normal and get on with my class and leave here. But I was shook to the core. When I got to the class, that particular class had a lecturer that night who was talking about comparative world religions, and he was talking about places on the planet and people who've had extraordinary spiritual experiences. And as he began to speak, he suddenly stopped in a class that's supposed to be 3 hours long and said, after just a little while, "I need everybody to take a break except that woman back there." And I was like, no, I can't take anymore. But he came to me and he said, "Do you know you're glowing? You have a light all around you. It is so brilliant." And I said, "No, I don't know that I have a light, and I don't want to know I have a light. I don't want to talk about it." And he said, "And your eyes, what happened to your eyes?" And I said, "Oh, please, I don't want to explain. I can't. It was too much. I don't even understand it." And he understood because he knew about this sort of thing, and much, much more than I. And he knew he was moving me very close to tears and didn't want to distress me. So in fact, he sent me home from the class. And I said, "But I didn't want to miss your class. I want to hear about these things." And he goes, "You don't need to hear this. You need to go home and rest." So I went home. The next day when I woke up, I went to school. I was a high school teacher, and my principal came to the room and he said, "You need to come with me and bring your purse." And when I went down to the principal's office, my boyfriend was there, and he said, "It's your sister who appears to be dying." And he got a ticket for me, and I flew immediately to my sister's bedside. I met my mother there, and my sister was in a coma. They said they didn't expect her to live more than a couple of hours. She was deathly pale white, barely breathing, very shallow breath, and they had no idea what was wrong with her. And suddenly it kicked in, the inner guidance. I was told to put my hand on her left temple, and when I did, she opened her eyes, looked at me, came out of the coma, and said, "Annie, my head hurts so bad." And I said, "I know, Debbie, just rest." And I kept my hand on her head, and I looked at her, and she closed her eyes, she rested, but I saw inside her head clearly. Now, MRIs and CAT scans hadn't been fully developed and weren't being used yet, and they didn't have any idea what was wrong with her, but I suddenly could see, and I asked for the surgeon to come, and I explained, "There's a busted balloon in my sister's head. I know exactly where it is." He said, "If I draw a picture of a brain, can you pinpoint it?" And I said, "Yes, but why would you listen to me?" And he said, "I've seen this thing before. You're having a spiritual experience, and probably right now you know more about what's happening to your sister than anyone on the planet." He operated. It was an aneurysm, exactly where I had pinpointed it. He was able to save her life. It was an absolutely phenomenal experience where I realized a very, very significant spiritual lesson, that my not wanting to leave the heavenly worlds was like being on one side of a dotted line, where we seek consciousness, we seek heaven and God for ourselves, for our own nirvana. But that's not what it's meant for. God is the greatest servant of all life. To be in true communion with God and to truly listen and participate with God and become a co-worker with God, that's the goal. And to do that, we have to follow the instructions as they're given. We have to open our hearts and truly believe "Thy will be done" is the way. Follow that way. because when I was able to help save my sister's life, the joy, the experience was so fulfilling, so deeply gratifying, and I committed my life to that, to following the inner guidance, to listening, to be aware that heaven is present here and now, that God is with us at all times, and the universe is speaking to us at all times, and drop the preposterous beliefs of my childhood that wouldn't allow for such a thing to have occurred, that you would see God and know God and be able to experience the divine without dying and going to heaven, and that it doesn't matter what your religion is, that we're all beautiful souls. We're divine, we're beautiful, we're aware, we're capable, we are everything we might ever want to be already. We are that, and we simply need to recognize it, be aware of it. That's what the book is about, but it's also about experience after experience that happened after I committed myself to that.
Yeah. And I have one question. At the very beginning of your experience, you saw this black dot in the room. What do you imagine could have precipitated the black dot appearing there that began your journey?
I believe that the black dot was just the reflection of this tunnel that some people have described. I know that, probably less than 10% of the people who've had near-death or out-of-body experiences go through this tunnel, but to some it's known as the tunnel of death. It's got other names in literature and in religious teachings throughout the world, but I think I was seeing a reflection of it, and that it was about to engulf me. I was about to go through that tunnel, whether I wanted to or not. Now, what had brought all of this on was my classroom experience. I was teaching literature, which includes a lot of philosophy, and I was teaching high school students, and I was very young. And they kept asking me what I believed, and I realized I don't really know the truth, and I don't really know what I believe. I want to know truth. So I had begun to say a little prayer every day: "Dear God, teach me truth so I can teach them truth." And I believe I had opened a door to the other worlds, to more communion with God than I ever imagined was possible.
And could you hold up your book so that we can see it?
Absolutely. Inner Guidance, Our Divine Birthright. I was very pleased to see it sold out in the first 4 months that it was released. What should have taken about 4 years to sell was gone in a flash because of social media. Because you have spoken to me earlier, that one of the stories that caught on was I was also rescued by dolphins from a shark attack. And that was also a beautiful spiritual experience, but it caused the book to go viral on the internet. And so I'm really excited about the results, and it's having its own little lovely life out there in the world and going all over to many, many different countries. And I'm on a world tour now, so I'm really excited to talk about the stories, and thank you for allowing me to share.
Okay. Anne, thank you.